So, hello everybody. I think we're going to get started. It looks like we have hi there, about 10 or 50, about 10 people on here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm just trying to make sure that everyone who is trying to get in is in. Okay. Okay, well, welcome. And just to make sure everybody is aware, we are recording this session. If anybody has an issue with that, please message me directly and let me know. Otherwise, we'll just carry on with the recording. It automatically was recording. So Nick Walmsley from AUCA and myself, Rebecca Granado, are going to be facilitating this conversation. It's short, we only have about an hour, and we're hoping that we can do it in such a way that will accomplish a couple of things. One being to get used to using Zoom and the breakout rooms and some other collaborative tools. We'll use a couple of other tools in this session. And then the second sort of goal or objective is really to have a conversation about the ways in which we're going to continue to connect our students together, to build communities of practice. So Nick, I think you wanted to start by talking a little bit about community building. Nick and I are not in the same place, I should add. We're in different countries. So this is again, a real opportunity for all of us to be collaborating across the network and working across boundaries. We even planned this across a wide distance. So Nick, I think you were gonna start and then I'll jump back in.
Yeah, okay. So hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Thank you for joining us, whatever time zone you are in. You know, Rebecca and I have been talking about this workshop over the past few days, and we sort of accepted that usually under the normal, ordinary circumstances at the beginning of every semester, you know, depending on how you set up your courses, how you run your courses, usually during the first session or two sessions of the semester, you know, there's a certain amount of, you know, what are classically referred to as icebreakers and introductions. And I know certainly in my classroom, I always like to give the students a stake in what kind of learning environment they want to develop over the course of the semester. So I always give them a couple of questions, you know, asking them to think about, you know, to define for themselves what a community is and, you know, list some of the kinds of communities that they belong to. And then we move on to a discussion about, okay, if a community is defined by its accepted values and practices, what kinds of values and practices do you want to enshrine, you know, in the course of the semester in your classroom to help, you know, build the most effective and, you know, helpful and supportive and experimental and encouraging, you know, learning environment? Which actually means that rather than, you know, just giving the students a syllabus in which you have, you know, the basic, you know, rubrics about, you know, turning off your digital devices and, you know, always turning up on time and so forth. You know, the students themselves actually, you know, create their own set of, you know, ethical practices for the classroom in order to foster, you know, a strong learning ethos. Of course, that's under the old rules. The rules have changed. And this is not a situation that any of us wanted to find ourselves in, both faculty and students. And that while we as faculty have had a bit more lead time than the students, particularly here at AUCA, where we're already on our spring break, you know, we've already been able to do a lot of work to think about how we can reconfigure our syllabi, how we can, you know, reorganize or rewrite assignments. But, you know, there are voices that have until now been missing from that discussion, and those are the voices of the students. So that, you know, just to give you my example, you know, when we recommence teaching next Monday, certainly for me, the first session is going to be, okay, we are in this extraordinary situation. We actually have to think about, maybe even deconstructing and then reconstructing our idea of what a learning community is now that we can't even be in the same classroom together. So that's really, where we find ourselves at. And, the kinds of questions that we're going to be exploring are, how is this new kind of emergency community different from the kinds of learning communities of practice we've already established in the classroom? What is transferable? What is not transferable? What can we add? And what might we even have to drop in order to create a valuable, community of learning practice for our students? Rebecca.
So you'll see that we're going to make use of a couple of areas in the Zoom platform. I hope everybody knows where the chat function is. I know everybody's using different ways of connecting across the network, and some of you are not using Zoom. But if anybody has trouble finding the chat function, if you could let us know now. Otherwise, we're going to assume that when we put stuff in there, that you're going to be able to access it. So you can see the little chat bubble at the bottom of the Zoom screen. And if you click on that, you should be able to see where we'll be putting notes in the chat function. So as Nick was saying, the fact that this is an emergency situation destabilizes our ability as faculty to really think this through right from the beginning. And yet we want to be thinking about this in cooperation with our students. So we're actually going to start with a short exercise, something that we're going to model that we can use as well with our students, a kind of tool, if you will, to get us thinking about the ways in which we build community in our normal classrooms, in our day-to-day lives before all of this came on the scene. So I'm going to ask you to go to a program on your web browser, and hopefully everybody's able to do that at the same time that they're in Zoom. I just put it in the chat function. It's called menti.com. Some of you may have used this before. And if you haven't, it's extremely easy. Once you get to the menti.com screen, all you will have to do is enter in this code that I am pasting into the chat function of Zoom. And what you'll see come up there is a question that we want you to think about. And that question is, what have you done in the past to build community in face-to-face classrooms? So I'll give everybody a second to find it. I muted for some reason. I'll give everyone a couple of minutes to find it. And once I see people starting to enter answers, I'll know that we're on the right track. If you have any questions about how to access this, you can message me directly and ask me a question through the chat function on Zoom. But if you go to menti.com and put in that code, you should see the question right there and be able to enter your answers. So the question is, what have you done in the past to build community in face-to-face classrooms? And in the meantime, I'm going to share the screen so that everybody can see the answers that are coming in. So we'll give it just one more minute since I can see that 8 people have responded. Okay, so we can see, we'll just take a look through this. I'll read through them since many of you are on mute. We have group and collaborative activities, online forums, okay. Establishing a sense of trust through maintaining a safe environment, openness, anonymity when needed, sincerity, showcasing your own personal experience to students is vital to that. Group work in class and outside class, assigning students in small groups. Okay, so group work comes up a couple of times, going back to the top. Introduction rounds, including fun facts about the student and professor, again, creating a personal connection, both between students and faculty. A pre-class introductory forum, name cards in class, intro group activities. Okay, so again, personal connections and also group work. We have, again, introduction, small groups, responsiveness, feedback, collaboration. Icebreakers, small group work, writing in small group work, open discussion, sharing around the room, sharing food and meals, invited students to the home, brought kids to class, take the class to a shared meal, asking students to define community, identify practices and ethos of that community. Okay, so we have some sort of consistency across some of these. Certainly personal connection is a big part of what a lot of you have written up here, and making sure that students are also working collaboratively in small groups. That's sort of a running theme as well. But personal connection is a big one, and a lot of that takes place in person, as many of you have noted. Things like sharing meals, getting together, doing stuff outside of class. Now, of course, this is a big challenge when it comes to the online classroom and how we can do some of these things and replicate some of these things when we're in a situation where we're actually at quite a distance. So one of the things we're hoping to talk about now is what are the kinds of things that in our new sudden learning communities that are online in the middle of the semester, what do we really want to keep? And what is it that we're prepared to give up? Now, there are many more things we could say about the ways in which we create community in face-to-face classrooms. This is just the beginning of that. But we want you to think a little bit about words that you might associate with the values of the community that you're trying to create. So you're going to do this part alone. You're going to think about it, and then we're going to write it down collaboratively. So this will be a chance for us to all speak, and so we can know who's actually on the phone and get to interact a little bit with each other. So we want you to come up with 2 words. One word, and I'll put this as well in the chat function, but I'm going to say it first. One word that represents the core value of community that you see as fundamental. So something that you wouldn't want to lose, even in an online space. Okay, so one word. And then the other word that represents one community value that you think is disposable, given these difficult circumstances. Okay, so I'll paste this in to the chat function so you can read it again. And you're going to do this on your own. And we'll give you just a couple of minutes, and then I guess we'll call on people to actually say their words back to us. So you can see in the chat function, we put the question there. Okay, we're going to use another function in Zoom, which can be a good collaborative tool. And many of you have probably used this already, but we're going to actually use the whiteboard function in Zoom so that we can record some of what folks are saying. And Nick, I'm going to be sharing the screen and doing the writing. You can facilitate the conversation since I won't be able to see the list of names.
Right. Okay. So I'm just gonna go through the list one by one. And hold on a second. Let me just.
Maybe we can hear where people are dialing in from, as well as their names. That might be helpful, so we can get to know each other virtually.
Sure. So Alexander, what is one value that you would keep and one that you might be prepared to dispose of? Alexander, can you hear me? I think you might.
Yeah.
Remember that many of you are muted.
Yeah.
You'll probably have to unmute before you speak.
Collaboration.
Okay, collaboration.
What about one value that you think is disposable in this environment?
Sorry, Alexander, can you hear us all right?
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have lost one of our participants temporarily. Maybe Nick, we can move on to the next person.
Or we can also ask people to, if people also want to, as you're telling us them, type them into the chat, as well, just so that we have a double record. So yeah, who's next? Kerry.
Hi, I'm
Kerry.
based at Bard Berlin, for those of you who don't know me, although currently I'm stranded with I'm on sabbatical in the positive sense, but I'm also stranded with my 2 children and my elderly parents in Massachusetts on Cape Cod. So, and yeah, so the first word that I wrote down in terms of values we want to keep was care. The values that can be disposable, this is really hard. Like I keep writing things down and then crossing it out. Like I wrote down regularity and then I immediately stuck a line through it because I thought actually maybe regularity is something that we really need to have. So I don't know, I'm not helpful on the second column. I apologize.
I think it is actually helpful to see how difficult it is for us to think about the kinds of things that we are willing to lose. And this is, you know, just to sort of preview some of what we're going to be talking about tomorrow as well, which Kerry will be facilitating, is how we can readjust our syllabi and our thinking to accommodate our learning outcomes as well, to accommodate this new form of communication with our students. So it's really important to think about, you know, if there are things that we really feel like we can't lose, or if we're not sure what we can lose. Possibly not much, possibly we're struggling with it. So I think that's actually very helpful, Kerry.
Yeah, good. Casey, are you with us? And
remember to unmute before you speak.
okay, Casey's not equipped.
Casey says that taking notes don't work in the classroom setting. Okay.
Right. Okay. Great. Celia.
Good microphone.
Yeah. I think that values we want to keep. I was thinking that we want students to keep, I would imagine, you know, it would be easy to give up the free writing part of the classroom in the real world. That it would seem very odd, perhaps online, for this to continue, but it seems like that would be a very good thing to continue in terms of a practice that students share. And values that can be disposable. I'm wondering if our general Bardian fear of lecturing could be put aside, that maybe online requires more of that, of just perhaps the professor talking and the students listening, and then there be this period of more collaborative interaction with the material and with each other. It seems as if the lag of online learning is difficult to overcome. So that's what I was wondering.
Okay. Great. Yes. Not something that many of us, you know, want to go back to.
I know.
But you know,
A radical thought.
yeah, needs must. Anastasia, are you with us?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Anastasia. And what
Afternoon.
and
I'm having trouble hearing you, Anastasia.
Yeah.
for me,
Yeah. Maybe you could type it into the chat function.
yeah, sure.
And while we're waiting for Anastasia to type, maybe we can
Yeah.
go on to another person and then
Yeah.
we can go back to Anastasia.
Yeah. Dan,
I
are you
will-
with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Patient, and we can dispose with face-to-face. Even online, many of my students don't have sufficient bandwidth to be able to actually open for us to even necessarily be able to see each other at all times in households where the internet is not good.
Yes. Yeah. That's a problem that we're encountering at Outsa, particularly since a lot of people left Bishkek for spring break and, you know, went off to, you know, their families. You know, maybe they live in a village or in one of the rural areas. And now that the government has imposed roadblocks between the south and the north and other parts of the country, it's actually going to be, you know, they can't get back to Bishkek, and they're stuck in some, you know, quite remote areas. David, are you with us?
So before we move on, Dan, could you just introduce yourself quickly? And also, I missed the value you want to keep. I couldn't hear you. You broke up for a second. But maybe you can also introduce yourself.
Dan Terrace, Al-Quds Bard College. I just said communication as a value to keep.
Communication. Okay, thank you. I couldn't hear you. Thank you very much.
Hi, this is David Shine from Bard College, Annandale. The value I think we want to keep is, what I wrote down was informality, but what I really mean by that is the personal touch, however you want to say that. And what I thought we could get rid of, Dan said it better than I could. I wrote down synchronicity, but what I meant by that was face-to-face instruction. Also, I couldn't figure out how to spell synchronicity.
I hope I just spelled it correctly. Great, thank you. And then we have a couple of comments coming through in the chat function as well.
Yeah.
So Maximus wrote values to keep would be trust, and then the value to dispose of would be excellence. So I'll add in trust. And then Anastasia wrote a community spirit and a community of spirit for to keep. And availability of knowledge, was that to keep or dispose of? Okay, well, I'll wait for her to, she'll put in what she meant by that momentarily.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great. Erica, are you with us?
Yep, I am.
Great.
So the value that I want to keep is trust, which somebody also just said. So I guess I could add to that and say respect. And then as far as what I thought could be disposable, like Carrie, I also struggled quite a bit with this one. And I ended up thinking a lot about synchronicity, which is something I'm grappling with right now in my class, whether or not, you know, it actually, whether I can keep the values in the first column without having any sort of real-time class meetings.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
I think I'll add to that, Nick, if that's okay.
Yeah.
If you don't mind if I go next. So I would, you know, because it ties in with what's come immediately before. I think the value that I try to keep with my students when they're online is the development of both public and private spaces for communication and for exchange of ideas. And then I think what I would say that I would be willing to lose is, I mean, I guess I was thinking in terms of structure, but I think what I really mean is more what Carrie said, which is regularity. And I guess I have a question mark next to that as well. But I was sort of thinking of, you know, the regular pacing that comes with the knowledge that you're going to be meeting up in person every week. If you know it can't be synchronous, the structure shifts. So I guess I would put a little check mark next to regularity and synchronicity for mine, what I'd be willing to lose. Okay, sorry, Nick, thank you.
Good. Gorana, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, so I'm Gorana. I'm from the CEU in Budapest, although not currently in Budapest, now in Croatia, and it's snowing. The few things I thought about are already mentioned here. So I thought actually a value that definitely we need to keep is trust and care, like it was already mentioned, in terms of really having an atmosphere where people feel comfortable to share ideas, because otherwise we're not going to achieve much. So in terms of trust and care, to achieve a comfortable environment for participation, to be able to have the community. And then it was also mentioned for values that we can possibly live without. And I thought a bit the same, like Carrie said at the beginning, about regularity. Is it something that we need or not? But then actually I thought about whether we need to have face-to-face and synchronous communication. And then I thought this is something that we can live without, but still we should regularly check in different ways, which can be asynchronous then. So that was my thinking.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Helga.
And yet another person from CEU. So I'm Helga Dorner, and from CEU, not based in Budapest, escaped the city. So yes, I would have also mentioned trust, definitely. But then I also kind of thought maybe we shouldn't repeat each other, whatever has been mentioned. So I came up with another one, which is persistence. So I think we need persistence in these times so that we can keep our regular activities and be able to focus and concentrate as faculty. And of course, this is important for our students as well. And then the other, like more on the other side, the disposable perfection. We should be able to give up on being perfect, and good enough, I think, is okay and acceptable.
Yeah.
That
Good.
seems like an important point, especially when we're thinking about a situation in which we didn't have the proper planning time.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
And so I'm just going to butt in here and actually kind of point out we're kind of demonstrating, one of the issues with, online learning is that sometimes things take a bit longer than we planned. And I know we haven't yet heard from James, Iskur, Margarita, and Zelida. And there are some couple other things we do want to move on. I'm wondering if you guys have anything that you'd like to add to these lists that are either quite different to things that we've done before, i.e. things we haven't already mentioned.
Yeah, I wanted to add, this is Salide Martinez-Oy. I am with the BARD Prison Initiative. I'm actually in Indianapolis. And it's, what I wanted to add was the sense of belonging. I think that's one that is important, obviously for many reasons, but when I think about our students, who most of them are first generation college or the first ones to be doing higher education, that there's still that need to be reminded that you belong, and especially in these times. And I would say that's really for any student group, that that there is a sense of belonging, that you and with that trust, which I think somebody has already mentioned. And as far as leaving out is this sense of control, and controlling our environment, controlling our, I guess even what we're going to teach or what's going to come out of our mouths, even though we have the power to be more scripted than ever, that it's okay to let go of some of that control. And I have kids in the background. That's why I'm muted and hiding. Hi, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. So you can also probably hear my kids in the background. So in terms of, building community with our students, letting them know that we're real people with our kids in the background, maybe not a terrible thing. But so we have some pretty good lists here of classroom values that we think are really critical. And this list is much longer than the things that we think are perhaps disposable, not surprising. But how we can actually help our students and help our faculty that we work with create these collaborative environments and continue to connect with each other and connect with students and maintain these values is the tricky bit. So we want to give you some time in small groups, in small Zoom groups, to think a little bit about this. And what we'll do is we'll break you into these groups, and we're going to ask you to do something very specific. We're going to give you in the chat function a short list of apps or tools that we think could be useful to allowing students to continue to build a community of practice, even though they are in a virtual space. And what we would like you to do in your groups, and we'll paste the assignment into the group chat, is to think about how one or two of these might allow you to support the community values you don't want to lose. In other words, what kinds of ways would you use these tools? And it may be that not all of you in the group have used all of them, but hopefully between the individuals in the group, everybody has used at least one. And if you haven't, this is also a good opportunity to have a little bit of a conversation about what these tools might be able to do. And then we can talk a little bit about it when we come back together. So again, we'll paste this list of applications or tools that we want you to think about into the chat function. I'm going to do it right now. And from there, we're going to break you into breakout rooms. And these will be random. So let me stop sharing the screen. I will also get a screen capture of the whiteboard so that I can paste it into the group chat for you as well. And that way you can take a look back at the values that we want to keep. So let me stop sharing and I will break you into your groups. And again, you will be looking at one or two of these tools or applications, and think about ways that they might help support the community values you don't want to lose. Okay. So you're going into your groups now. And we'll see you back here in about 5 minutes. So you should have been invited to join a breakout room, and you will need to accept that invitation. Nick? Can you hear me? Okay. So I think we're still waiting for a few people to come back. I noticed that the groups are, Nick, I don't know if your group entered into the, oh yes, okay, you did. You're entering into the Google Doc.
Sorry, Rebecca, where is the Google Doc? I think my group didn't enter in anything because we didn't, or I don't know, I didn't see where to do that.
It was in the chat, but I'm sharing it again.
Oh, okay.
So I think one of the things that I've often found challenging and disruptive with teaching online is moving between all of the different platforms. And this is something that, you know, of course, we're experiencing right now with trying to find the Google Doc and moving between the chat function and the rooms. It takes a little practice with all of us, with the students and with the faculty, to do it more seamlessly. But hopefully everybody's found the Google document now. I see everybody typing. So Nick, do you want to unmute?
Okay, unmute. Okay, good. I'm back on.
I will share the Google Docs screen as well, even though everybody should have it open, but in case you want to also be looking at the Zoom screen. So I was floating kind of in between the different rooms, and a couple of the rooms I heard people saying things like they weren't familiar with many of the tools and perhaps hadn't used them in a teaching setting. So I thought we could use maybe these last 11 minutes to talk a little bit about what folks have come up with in terms of ideas and what questions people might have. And I can direct you to some resources as well of ways in which you might be able to use these in teaching settings. And also just to sort of have a general discussion where maybe we're also doubting how some of these might be useful.
Yeah.
So Nick, why don't you?
Yeah. So one, you know, the question is, you know, to sort of kind of kick us off is that, you know, what have people already, you know, been using? I assume it goes without saying that every, you know, network campus will have its own learning management system, whether it's Canvas or Blackboard or Moodle, you know, the basic LMS for, you know, posting materials online, syllabi, students submitting assignments. And I'm wondering how people have managed to take advantages of the built-in affordances, you know, of those platforms, you know, if you like the legacy platforms that we all sort of end up using anyway. But then how have you then augmented the LMSs with other platforms or apps or systems, whether it's Google Meet, Google Hangouts, Skype, Zoom, WebEx, and so forth, particularly with a view to helping, you know, sustain the community in these very difficult times. And don't forget, you'll probably need to unmute if you're about to respond.
Nick, can you repeat the question, please? Because everyone was typing in the Google Doc and we missed it a little bit.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So the question is, in what ways have people already been able to start, rebuilding, reestablishing their communities of learning practice, perhaps not using maybe some of these new apps or platforms that we've suggested here, but the legacy platforms like the learning management systems, Moodle, Blackboard, Canvas, and so on, for staying in touch with the students and helping to maintain community cohesion.
So you want us to share our experience, what we have already did?
Yes, yes.
Okay, then I can say, if you like, I think in my case, I was mostly using the Moodle platform and just moved a bit more of things that we were communicating about through the Moodle, channeled through the Moodle rather than emailing and face-to-face. And it sort of worked fine. So it creates like this shared pool of communication. And then in this case, also students don't have to ask anything individually, but more like if you have a shared forum and you already answered certain questions there, then others can see it. So, and then at some point they started also to respond to each other. So you don't have to be in control of everything all the time. So that I think was nice to see.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, I can probably share experience of EHU. So basically every course at the university has a Moodle supporting environment. And in this sense, we just needed to strengthen up and to build up slightly more materials and to adjust the schedule of classes in order to make sure that there is a smooth transition from face-to-face mode to distance mode. So Moodle is a primary platform in our case. We are now just strengthening it, and then all of the faculty of the university on a regular basis, they get updates on new methods, and particularly what we receive from Bard College. It's highly useful materials from the Center for Experimental Humanities, for instance. So that manual is very useful. And lastly, we started to use more and more of Zoom and Google Hangouts. Before that, it was mostly BlueJeans that we used, but Moodle remains #1 avenue for arranging any of the classes at EHU so far.
So one of the reasons we presented these few apps as possibilities for cultivating connections between students and building community of practice is because a lot of these apps are things that our students are already using. Many students have Spotify accounts. Many of us have Spotify accounts. Many students are using things like Flipboard and Instagram. So one of the ways that we can encourage the community of practice to continue is to lower the barriers for students to access something that may seem really foreign. A Zoom or a Moodle or another learning management system may seem very stilted and awkward to students when they're not, if they're not looking at each other synchronously. It may seem almost like encountering a new text, a little bit scary. So one of the things we were trying to encourage here was for us to think collectively about the ways in which we can employ the materials that students already feel very comfortable with. So you'll see that I put in the chat function a couple of draft assignments that we've come up with within the network. One using Flipboard as a way to continuously create a conversation between students where they're communicating by pulling together materials from outside and creating a kind of online magazine. It's a way for them to seamlessly communicate and to create something collectively and to do it around a classroom topic, but something they can do outside of the class. So they also get some private space. Likewise, things like WhatsApp and Telegram and Instagram, those could be either class groups or they could be private groups with students. So students can continue to have separate conversations like they might do outside of the classroom in their, hallways of their dorms, or in the case of AQB, on the buses going back and forth to campus. So that was part of the reason we chose these particular apps as a way to move us away from only thinking about the ways in which we're using the standard tools we're presented with, our universities and particular colleges, learning management systems and such.
Yeah.
So Nick, you were going to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, because one thing always to kind of bear in mind, and actually I wanted to just say that here I'll just sort of return to the two words that I came up with. One was I wanted to maintain the schedule, a sense of schedule, to sort of provide an anchor, so that students always know that there's a time and a place where they can find me. But then I also, the value that I wanted to get rid of was the one obviously about getting rid of the ban on devices. Because now we're all about computers and devices. But in a curious way, because students have always been, for the most part, told, no, you can't use your devices for learning activities in the classroom. They actually, and faculty often haven't worked with them previously about how to make the best use of, cell phones or tablets or even computers, in a learning environment. So, obviously the old ban on technology is out the window. And also because with students now stuck at home, and I know this is a point somewhere, someone had made somewhere else, students are at home when they weren't expecting to be home, and there may only be one computer in the household, and perhaps multiple children now at home, all needing to use a computer. A lot of our students are going to be using their cell phones. And the thing about a lot of these apps, especially the communication and messaging apps, is that they are designed, for use on a cell phone, in a way that traditional learning management systems aren't. And, if you look at, the way we often structure our e-courses, our Moodles, our Canvases, and so forth, they're often highly detailed, but they're not terribly user-friendly when viewed on a cell phone or even a tablet. Whereas things like Instagram, Telegram, WhatsApp, and so forth, they're easy to use, they're designed for the platform in question, and that sort of lowers the hurdle, lowers the barrier for students to still be a part of the community without feeling like they've sort of got to navigate through, a thicket of, sections and subsections and assignments and prompts and so forth.
Good. Well, in the last minute, I think what we'd like to ask folks is, I shared a couple of assignments that we came up with, like I said, but I think it would be wonderful if those of you who started to put some notes into this Google Doc that I was sharing a couple of minutes ago before I lost it, there it is, if you could continue to develop some of these ideas. If you find that you're using Twitter or Instagram or Spotify in some way, it'd be really fantastic if you could share that out with folks. And you can do that by just emailing some ideas to me or Nick, or continuing to update this document. I'll continue to look at it for the next couple of days and see if anything else comes up. But we'd love to hear if folks actually employ any of these really simple, basic social media apps in their classes in a way of building community in a teaching environment. So if you do come up with anything, please do share it with us.
Okay,
Are there any final comments or questions? I know we're at 10 o'clock in Eastern Standard Time. I had to think about that for a minute. We're at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Are there any comments or questions from anybody? Okay, well then we will be following up tomorrow with some work on rethinking learning outcomes and syllabi. Hopefully some of you will join. And again, if anything comes to mind in terms of how you might want to experiment with some of these social media apps, please be in touch so that we can share some of our best practices.
Great. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and best of luck to you all. I know it was what a very stressful and difficult time for everyone under sort of extraordinary circumstances. But I really appreciate you taking an hour out of your, schedules to meet with us and chat with us, and create our own, community, extraordinary community of learning practice at this time.
And it was nice to see your cat, Nick.
Yeah, it couldn't be a video call to Nick Wormsley without one or both of his cats, getting up to malarkey in the background.
Well, this is, part of humanizing us.
The world we're living in. Nice to see you all. Thank you all. Thank you, Nick and Rebecca, for convening us.
Thank you. We'll
Thank
talk
you very much.
Thank you. See you. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Take care. Ciao.